Hello and welcome to the Washington Urban Debate League's Novice Video Series. Today, we'll introduce the disadvantage. We'll walk through the parts of this cornerstone of negative strategy, how to use the disadvantage beyond the first negative constructive, and how to answer disadvantages when you are the affirmative. First, what am I talking about? The disadvantage is the most common off-case argument that negative teams can make. They bring up a negative outcome of the cause and effect of the plan that the affirmative doesn't discuss, for obvious reasons. The disadvantage, or DA, is a key component of a balanced negative strategy and can be used in combination with counterplans, topicality, and other on-case arguments to defeat the affirmative. Strategic choices reading disadvantages, like all negative strategies, should be made by the second negative speaker, who will determine the negative strategy in the block, and will have to eventually go for the negative strategy and persuade the judge that they should vote negative in the second negative rebuttal. Two things to consider about disadvantages. The first is time. Disadvantages are a big part of most negative strategies. As such, make sure you have time to read all the arguments you want to get into the round. So keep the first negative constructive, the outline of your argument, lean and mean. Second, disadvantages pair well with other types of arguments. So have a plan when you compose your first negative constructive speech. Make sure to have multiple reasons why the affirmative is bad to give yourself options later in the round. Let's walk through the parts of a disadvantage. The building blocks of a disadvantage are the same as the building blocks of an affirmative advantage, with uniqueness, links, and impacts. Uniqueness, as you know, is what the situation is now. It's often important to include evidence of a pattern or trend, or talk about a recent update. This is usually described as something good happening less, or having completely stopped now, or something bad that is going to happen or going to increase in frequency. Good uniqueness evidence is recent, comes from a qualified source, and has multiple reasons to support its claim. The link is the discussion of cause and effect. What does the plan's action do to change the trend we discussed in the uniqueness? For a disadvantage, this should be a significant change for the worse. Why the plan is a bad idea. The link can be a direct result of the plan, a result of attempting to do the plan, a result of attempting to do the plan in relation to someone else, or an indirect result of the plan, such as a trade-off. Having multiple reasons why the plan has the cause and effect that you're talking about is important, so the affirmative can't just sit on one idea and beat you. As you know, the impact is the outcome of the cause and effect of the plan. When you're the negative, you want this to be a big, scary reason why the plan action results in a bad outcome. When thinking about your impacts, it's important to consider time frame, magnitude, and probability. How big and scary is the outcome? When will it happen? And how likely is it to actually be true? Let's walk through an example. The disadvantage is a spending trade-off found in the novice packet. The uniqueness argues that the United States is going to spend money to fight ISIS and North Korea right now. However, the link, the cause and effect, is that the new education spending will cause a trade-off with the military budget. And the impact is that reducing military spending could let ISIS attack the United States. This argument is a big reason why people should vote against the plan. Diverting money from the military to education could cause terrorism. The magnitude could be that lots of people could die in a terrorist attack. The time frame is that terrorism can happen very soon and is highly unpredictable. When it comes to probability, ISIS has proven capable of attacking the United States before, so the risk must be high. So how do you use a disadvantage in a debate round? In the first negative constructive, you'll want to introduce an array of arguments against the affirmative case. As a result, don't go too in-depth on any one point. Stick to an outline of your key claims and warrants. This shell should have 3 or 4 pieces of evidence maximum to support each piece of the argument you're making: uniqueness, links, and impacts. A single disadvantage should only take 2 or 3 minutes to read maximum. So if it's taking longer than that, highlight down your evidence to focus on the key points. The more efficient you are, the more arguments you can make, and the harder it is for the affirmative to respond to all of them effectively, making it likely for you to win the debate. Next, let's talk about the block, the second negative constructive and the first negative rebuttal. These are functionally the same speech, so divide and conquer. Only one person should talk about the disadvantage, and the other person should focus on other arguments from the first negative constructive. At the top, tell a quick story of the disadvantage. What's the narrative you're trying to sell about how the planned action is a bad idea? Second, stay organized and debate the argument piece by piece. Answer any uniqueness arguments out of the second affirmative constructive. Then answer any link arguments out of the second affirmative constructive. It's helpful to add at least one new link argument in the block to support your claims. Lastly, answer any impact arguments made by the second affirmative constructive, and add at least one new impact scenario in the block to make your disadvantage seem more significant, a reason to vote against the affirmative plan. Be sure to do impact calculus, comparing the disadvantage of the negative to the affirmative's advantages. In the 2NR, you only want to go for one reason why the affirmative should lose. If the disadvantage is that reason that you think is best at the end of the debate, the entire 2NR should be about the disadvantage. The first affirmative rebuttal had to answer 13 minutes of negative arguments in only 5, so chances are they didn't do a good job of answering any of them. Be sure to tell the story of your disadvantage. This is the last time you can persuade the judge about your side of the story. Break down the first affirmative rebuttal's arguments into the pieces: uniqueness, links, and impacts, and answer anything they might have said. Lastly, draw comparisons. Talk about how the disadvantages to the plan are larger, more likely, and will happen sooner than the advantages of the plan. So how do you answer a disadvantage when you are the affirmative? This might seem like a daunting task, but if you break it up into its parts, it's really not so bad. The uniqueness debate. Well, the disadvantage will suggest that a current trend exists or an event is likely to happen. You can either deny this claim or suggest that it is inevitable. Here are 2 examples. First, the disadvantage is that a bill is likely to pass Congress, but the plan might cause a trade-off. The non-unique denies the claim of the disadvantage, saying that the bill will never pass Congress. The inevitability argument says that the bill will pass Congress, but it's so inevitable that the plan will not impact whether it does or does not pass. The second example. The disadvantage is that the government is spending money on the military now. A non-unique argument could say that the government is not spending money on the military now. An inevitability argument could be that the military has a giant budget and can buy anything it wants, so it doesn't really matter how much is spent. Let's talk about the link debate. This is where they describe the cause and effect of the plan. You have 2 options: defensive no-link arguments or offensive link-turn arguments. Let's walk through 2 examples. The disadvantage is that a bill is going to pass Congress, but the plan might create a trade-off. The no-link is to deny the original claim. The plan will not cause a trade-off, or the bill will actually be more likely to pass. The link turn is that the plan will cause a trade-off, and that's a good thing. Second example. The disadvantage is that the government is spending money on the military now. A no-link argument could be that military and education spending do not trade off. The link turn argument would be that military and education spending does trade off, which is a good thing. We don't need to spend more money on the military. On the impact debate, this is where they're going to tell a big, scary story about the outcome of the disadvantage. There are often leaps of logic or great exaggerations involved in this telling. You have two options: defensive no-impact arguments or offensive impact turn arguments. Let's walk through our examples one last time. The first example: the disadvantage is that a bill is likely to pass Congress now, helping the economy, let's say. The no impact could say that the bill will not impact the economy. The impact turn will say that the bill will actually hurt the economy, so it's a good thing we don't let it pass. The second example: the disadvantage says that the government is going to spend money on the military to fight terrorism. The no impact argues that terrorism just isn't a large threat. We have ISIS on the run. The impact turn says that military spending on counterterrorism could be ineffective and could actually create more terrorists, increasing the threat.